A new era is upon us. Pulse has taken the world by storm as the leading Web3 social media. Beyond current features like casting, tipping, inscription trading, and earning, it's now elevating to the next level, on-chain.
Soil, a fully regulated, seamless link between traditional finance and the digital crypto world, offering secure returns fully backed by tangible, real-world assets.
The Credify testnet is live, so head on over to demo.credify.finance to see how you can effortlessly experiment with autonomous earning, corporate bonds, credit and ex-credit utilities, and modular.
Good afternoon, everyone. BC Richfield here, coming to you live from a very hot and sunny London. It's gone 1 minute past midday here, making it 1 minute past 1100 UTC. A very good afternoon and welcome to everybody joining this live today, as well as everybody that's going to be watching this on catch up. So it is our Alt Request Wednesday, and obviously the market's starting to see some moves now. So we're going to be taking your suggestions that you want to see charted. Simon, a long-term patron of the channel, in there already. XRP, please. You are very welcome, mate. We'll definitely take a look at that. Wanted to start obviously with ETH today as well, so do keep them coming in. Let me know. If not, I'm just going to pick some at random. If anybody's got any good AI suggestions, for example, that narrative seems to be very hot at the moment. So without further ado, let's jump onto the charts. Nick, my friend. Yeah, sure, we can take a look at Sol. In fact, we had that lovely long on Sol yesterday, didn't we? It came so close to that final target before bombing out. So I'm going to start here. Actually, I'm going to zoom out a little bit further here on the weekly. Not really going to do a lot of education in this one, guys. If you've got any questions about the methods, the basic core of it is we're looking for liquidity above old highs, below old lows, and how price reacts within these gaps, fair value gaps. All right. Whack, my friend. Hello, mate. ETH is great. Craigie boy, always good interest in ETH. So let's just pop these off for a second and just look at where we are, right? Always really good to look at the candles. Now, a lot of people would consider this a bearish candle. I don't. Would have been asking questions if we'd closed the body below this, yeah? So we're looking at that then drawing a little bit lower here, becoming an engulfing, a bearish engulfing. For me, this is a bullish candle, right? Why? Because it's like a large-bodied pin bar candle, all right? Now, look, candle study patterns, bits and pieces like that, right, can be subjective to some extent. And actually, a very dear friend of mine, Pedro Pedma7, you'll know him as. If you don't follow him, go and give him a follow over on Twitter. Just the most magnificent algorithmic trader, and has this wonderful brain, this huge mind that's really, really good at processing data. And he did a study about the use of these candles, right? So look, pin bar candles, right? Look, we've got one here. Yeah, we've got one here. You've got here, right? Obviously we've closed that one there. It's quite a large bodied one. We had another one here, this one, for example, as well, maybe a bit of a large body. But actually what his study was saying is these are so much more relevant when you're in trend, yeah, versus when you're not, okay? However, what we're looking at the downside wicks here is, remember, the wicks are where price has tried to go, the body is where it's succeeded. So we're looking at this downside wick, and I'm saying to myself, well, look, on a weekly basis, price tried to get pushed. We closed up here. There was a huge bearish sell-off, yeah? Price tried to get all the way down to here, but recovered a fair chunk of it. Now, if we're looking at it in those terms, we've got that big-bodied candle there. You know, after a corrective move like this one, look what we had with this one that looks quite similar here, yeah? And it led into this moving forward. So that's what I'm really interested on that time frame. But actually, what I really want to look at here is our daily. Okay, so we've got our key liquidity here. Weekly swing low was swept. We saw that nice recovery higher. We've got our weekly level up here to the highs that we're looking to target, which on Ethereum is 3,981.56 here on Bybit. And at the moment, for me, it's quite simple, really. We crashed through this inversion setup, right? So this was a bearish gap, should have offered resistance, right? But it didn't. Price flew through it, right? Now, at the time, it wasn't crazy helpful to us because we flew through this one, closing above this and this one as well, right? Erica, hello, mate. Yeah, sorry. I think you must have been so early that I didn't see you. That I didn't see you in my comments because you were here before me. But there's never any doubt that you're here, obviously, Erica, and ever present. So, look, this wasn't overly helpful in terms of getting into a trade here. Obviously, we saw the strength, the resurgence coming in, but we were looking for longs down here anyway, looking for those intraday little scalps that can develop out. You keep a piece of that trade alive, develop it into swings in case you get to this origin of the trend, right? So when we're looking at this, I think that's exactly it, Whack. It must be lagging today, even worse than normal. When we look at this here, quite simply, what has price done? Well, price is finding support in this region here. Yeah. So this was a bearish gap. We closed through this. Look at the displacement here. Look at the aggression, the momentum, however you want to put it. Price has now come back to kind of retest this area. And what we're looking for, especially as people, what the bulls are looking for is for this to be reconfirming as support, because we never retested it after breaking out from it. So basically think of it like this as a confirmation that buyers are still here, the people that caused this move up, and that then we're looking to move higher. Had we closed below this, this would have lost its significance, and then I would have been looking for price to kind of come down to this swing low down here, and ultimately these lower down. However, we haven't. We've held that, right? And we've held it really, really nicely. So what's the current state with price? Well, we're currently being rejected at this gap, right? This is what's capping the market at the moment. Price came up, rejection, right? Now, third time here. What I quite like is how price is hanging here. And although it's a very small order block within a larger order block, this is a bit too large, right? So, to throw some nuance at you, because technically when you're looking at order blocks and that, combined candles, typically you would allow those to be together, where the smaller ones have slightly less significant if they have a smaller body. However, look at these 4 candles here. Are you saying that whole area is an order block, right? It just doesn't become useful. So there's, like with most things in trading, there's a little bit of nuance. Okay, so as we look up here, we can see that we found support here. We've set this kind of smaller OB here, right? And then we kind of pushed up from it. What I quite like about this is that the bodies seem to really be respecting it. Yeah, so look, closed above it here, and at the moment we've got these two. So I'm looking for price to push on here for me. And I'm also saying to myself, well, excuse me, if we're looking at this, right, if we had resistance, why is price trying to keep push through here? If the sellers were really, really here, if the aggression, if the sellers wanted to step in and really push this lower, why? Why this and this? Why would you come back up until you would expect a fairly sharp reaction lower, all right? So that's basically my thought process on that. For example, this, retesting this inversion, the daily inversion, see how price immediately kind of moves away from it. What it didn't do is dig in again, and then start to go. So this for me is telling me the price is probably going to take another run on this level here. So if we pop this down to our 4 hour, get our kind of ultimate context here, I just turn the session breaks off. For anybody that's interested in that, excuse me, your session breaks are just on your chart settings and then under events. And if you pop them on, you just get your day dividers on there. Very, very good for intraday trading when you're looking at where liquidity is. So we can see here, this black line represents the daily order block, where we can see price kind of holding this quite nicely. Now, what happened yesterday is we set this little kind of sliver of a gap here. And what I was looking at this for was to say, okay, well, look, if price is really kind of, is bearish here, and we're really going to dig deeper into this order block, again, look at the wicks when we have dipped into this. Yeah, so look, quick reaction here. Price ultimately, sound like a broken record, I know, but rejected at this bearish gap here. I'll just do that in red so it stands out above the others. So if I wanted real confirmation here and I wanted to kind of take a kind of riskier early days kind of swing setup, I'd want to see price close above this and establish itself here. And then ideally on a daily scale, obviously we're back above this. However, happy to take some aggressive positions there because we know where our risk is, right? And what I mean by that is prices come, we set the high, low, lower high, lower low. I think people now are thinking, okay, another lower high, moving to another lower low. So if we were to show strength here and come back above this and invalidate that structure, I think we could be using this to kind of turn into a base. All Fins, welcome, mate, and thank you very much. So this is what I'm watching at the moment, is basically a story of a couple of fair value gaps. This is our first immediate show of strength here because this fair value gap, see this one, the one in red, that rejected price. Price failed to close above that. The other thing that it did is Showed great respect here to the equilibrium of that gap, all right? It's just a way we can overlay another little confluence to see if price is managing to push into this upper half. And we can see here that it didn't. Look how well the body's respected that. So fine. So then when price was coming into here, and let me just replay this for you guys for a moment. On the close of this candle here, right, which closed at 1 o'clock in the morning, price came down and set this bearish gap. The expectation for a bearish gap, as this one did, is to reject price. So when price closed down here, the expectation was for price to reject and go lower. What we can see actually happened, and look at that initial reaction from price there. See how it wicked up there and then went right back down and then recovered to close back above here. That close above tells me that price is now seeking liquidity higher. So that changes from being that plan to saying, well, where's our next liquidity? Quite simply above this swing high, all right? And that swing high is set there at 336605 here on Bybit. Now we've closed above, this becomes an inversion. And now our expectation is to see price move higher. We can see we had this really nice expansion, unfortunately, a little bit early for me this morning at 5 a.m. And now we're kind of sat here. So what I would be doing is saying, like, yes, we're still bearish here in terms of market structure on a 4-hour scale, right? But if our expectation is for price to be drawing higher, retesting these levels, coming back to this daily gap, we've got our upside target here. And then we can afford to move to a lower time frame here and be more granular with our assessment, yeah? Meaning that at the moment, we could see this very comfortably as a bull flag. Okay, so we've had a large expansion here. What's price doing is it's condensing in this area. It's coiling up like a spring, right? Then what you would look for is a strong breakout here. And what we would want to see is, you know, you want to see these areas, excuse me, taken out. We've taken liquidity from below the lows here. I can draw a straight line. Draw liquidity below the lows. You want to see a strong breakout above this level. And then this is the kind of area you can look to be a buyer, okay? And that's just how I'm looking at ETH at the moment. I think, you know, we've had a really nice, strong recovery here. Ultimately, we have to pay respect to our higher time frames, and the higher time frames here, the 4-hour, if we're using that, is telling us that, you know, we need to be cautious because we're coming back to this bearish gap now. However, something that I do like about this is as soon as we whipped through this gap here, we've rebalanced this. So it's not like this is an area I'm expecting to immediately find a rejection, okay? What you'll notice is here, just going to use this as an example and one that's close by so you can tell we're not cherry picking it, or I'm not cherry picking it, is this. This gap was retested here, led to an expansion. So when price came back down here, why did it find support? Well, quite simply, that wick hadn't completely rebalanced the gap, right? So if we look at that there, had we rebalanced that gap, then I would have expected price to have to come down and take out the low of that wick. Instead, what it did was create this beautiful liquidity pool that allowed price to come down, sweep liquidity, rebalance the rest of the gap, and then cause that move higher. So that's why I think that this is the most likely target here, sat just outside of our gap. If we were to close out here on a 4-hour scale, I would then expect price to move on quite aggressively from there to our upside targets, right? Never forgetting that we give more weight to the higher time frames, yeah? I don't really consider this massively bearish here at the moment. If you're looking at microstructure, we have had that shift. We've gone from higher highs and higher lows, right? We're now looking in like we're setting this kind of lower high, but we can invalidate that just by ripping past it. All right, so really, really kind of watching that closely here on the daily. So let's take a look at XRP, shall we? And this one is looking tasty for our XRP army. Such good promoters of the crypto space, absolute hardcore fans. And, you know, what's not to like on this chart at the moment, you know, just because I know you'd hate me to not sound like I'm constantly banging the same drum, right? But look at that. That beautiful inversion. What did we do? Look, that strong close above. What did it tell us that price was most likely to do? That it was going to seek out liquidity above that high. When that closed, it left a failure swing on a weekly scale. That expansion is to attack this liquidity, right? Next liquidity on a weekly scale is up here at 0.7456. And at the moment, that's where it looks where, you know, XRP wants to go to. how we close above this high will tell us a lot. For example, how we close above these equal highs here told us a lot, yeah? So first of all, relative equal highs, that high again, leaving the failure swing. Notice the pattern here, price coming up, getting so close, coming back down. When you see these failure swings, liquidity being left there, you know, that's why they're known as equal highs or relative equal highs. That's a really good liquidity pocket for price to come back and attack. Also, what's interesting here is we can see the rebalancing of this gap here. Before it was an inversion, it was obviously bearish, so resistance, 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 right? But then this rejection here, you're like, BC, well, you just said this has been rebalanced now, so it probably doesn't have the same significance. No, it doesn't, not in my eyes anyway. However, I think what rejected price here was this swing high, right? So if we draw both of those across and we move that back to being the inversion that it is, look how price rejected here. But then when we got this strong close above, yeah, holding here, this area of support, now we look to move higher. We also have this high here, which as we draw that across, we can see, again, it's price kind of moving into these. We see a strong close like this above, expect continuation. Obviously, if we see the weekly close back below, then we might need to be a little more cautious. Raz, my man, how are you doing? Yeah, XRP, back to the old school, mate. Back to the old school warriors. So on a daily scale, where are we? Well, we've done a couple of things here, actually. We got this large single-bodied candle, which we've set as an order block. Yeah, we've got these ones as well. I wouldn't really consider that. I'd focus on this one, as this one kind of contains these here as well. But ultimately, look, large down close candle here. What happens when we close above it? We look for it to be retested as a bullish order block. We can see we got that retest here, and price has really kind of taken off this morning, okay? So I'm just going to get rid of this for a moment. We know those kind of levels are there. We want to see how price closes above this. Look at these perfect equal highs here as well. So great liquidity pool for price to move through. So on a daily scale, really, I mean, the only other thing that I would throw in here is our B Pro, right? Our in-house indicator. And look, this has had us bullish since here, right? This has had us bullish since, what was the open of this? Let me get rid of that quickly. Open of this was, weirdly deciding not to show us on here. Interesting. Not sure why that's not doing that. But anyway, we can just chart it on here. We've got 0.5369 as we came above this order block here, but B Pro had us bullish here from 0.4741. So again, we're using this as confluence as a high time frame trailer trend, right? So below the black line, we're favoring bearish trades. Above the light gray line, we're favoring bullish. And we can see how this is really starting to angle up here, showing the impressive move that we've seen here from XRP. So, yeah, exactly. We love the XRP army. Hardcore soldiers. So that's where we are. Actually, we can see we've had a really nice consolidation in here as well, right? And price really coming up. The other thing that we see here is those constantly, these just wicks getting higher and higher and higher. Price condensing in. We've had that pop out of the top. Now we want to see this area used as a base and for price to then move up from there. So let's take a look at our 4 hour as well. Okay, we can see that a little bit closer in here, you know, these higher lows. We had a really nice little liquidity sweep here, and that then led to that big jump, and price has now absolutely rocketed. So what would I be looking for here? Well, for me, I've got a really clear set of parameters. If this is a confirmed breakout, we want to see this level hold. So I want to see one of two things, either price now it's had this expansion out to retest and respect this area. There's a few other things that we want to take into consideration here, like this order block or these order blocks, right? Which you'll see on my chart in blue. And that includes those two candles, because you can see it's within the range of the previous candle. Now, a retest of this area, I think great area for buyers to step in here. Now, we might not get it, because the other thing that I've noticed here is we've got this nice bullish gap below us as well, which we'll just do in green so it stands out with a bit more significance. Now, ideal scenario here for me is price draws back to this gap, rebalancing it, wicks through into this bullish order block, and then, you know, retesting this area of support, and we ultimately get that continuation of expansion. All right. So that's what I'm watching for today in terms of breaking that down a little bit further. we can actually see that we've had a really nice reaction here. All right, we've taken out some lows. Now, a great thing to do here, bearing in mind, we've got Asia's high here, which is also relative equal highs. I'm going to draw that in as equal highs. Is let's see how this candle closes, right? Because a couple of interesting things here. We've got our old friend, the inversion here as well, telling us on a 15-minute scale that we've now, hang on, that's on there. On a 15-minute scale, what have we done? Well, we've now taken some liquidity here below these lows. Brilliant. So we've induced. We've now had a big expansion higher. Clear and obvious liquidity is resting above this high here. Now, if price should close in a similar fashion to this, it will give us a bullish order block, a bullish gap here. This could be an area for your intraday traders to look for price to pull back to, hold this area and move up. The other thing it offers is really good confidence if we are going to follow our high time frame plan, which we can see by the large green line here and come back down to here, is that if we get a close below this, then price is almost certainly seeking out liquidity below these lows. And, like we said, seeing a wick down into this area and a strong V-shaped recovery would be super, super good, in my opinion. We might not get that. Price could just run hot from here. It could continue to break down, but as long as we're prepared, especially from an intraday perspective, to trade this both ways. So pop this back on the weekly quickly, just to show again that we've got these really nice upside targets here on a weekly basis, all the way up at 0.7456. So the other one we wanted to look at was Sol. I can't remember if we looked at Sol on Bybit or Binance last time, did we? Almost certainly on this one then, judging by the amount of stuff on the chart. So let's just go down to daily scale quickly. So just before we get this off the chart, let's see what we were talking about here. Key kind of pivot point, right, going across the chart. We can see that's the area we targeted quite aggressively for our longs, not just because of that, but because after this expansion, again, we left this nice bullish gap, right? So price had taken liquidity from these highs, corrected down into here, found the buyers stepping in, just as we were looking at on Ethereum, on a weekly scale this time, looking at that big expansion candle, leaving that large body pin bar with a short nose, or like a large kind of headed hammer candle. Interesting thing here, always ask myself, what's price done most recently? And it's taken out this high. All right, just gonna get rid of whatever's in there. Price has taken this high, now it's correcting lower. So where's it correcting? So we don't have any gaps in here, so we can move to the lower time frames, which we'll look at in a minute on the 15-minute. All right. But ultimately, again, if we're looking at this in terms of order blocks, now, yes, we do have this larger one here, but you see how the body of this one has come down a reasonable amount below this. So for me, this is definitely of interest. All right. So drawing this across here, this is a really, really good point to look for price to hold. Okay, we can see again with this, we've wicked below that, found support in here. So let's kind of break it down a little bit more granular, and always remembering our high time frame bias here, saying that, look, if we are bullish on the higher time frame, the trend is our friend until the end. So if we're looking for continuation, we just want to put a set of parameters in place that says, all right, well, what does that continuation look like? I favor highs, lows, and fair value gaps, and then you're going to kind of dive into your order blocks as well. What we can see here, which is quite interesting actually, is all of these consecutive down close candles. So this doesn't really give us much help in the way of looking for this to become an order block, because there's just too many of them there. So we're now saying, okay, well, what's the key area we can look? Well, I think price, that's the key high here. That's the first swing high that we've got. So that's, if price is really looking to expand higher, that's where the liquidity is resting that we are interested in. So that definitely becomes a target. And then from here, it's seeing how price reacts. So look at this low as an example, right? Price comes out, it really struggles to close below it. And then look how long the downside wicks are. That's because the buying pressure, think of it like this. This is where the buyers are stepping in, right? This is where, price is trying to get down and it's failing, trying to get down, failing again. And then all of a sudden you can see that flip. We set that pin bar candle again, and then we get that expansion. So I'd like to kind of see price head into this area up here. But again, look, potentially leaving that cheeky failure swing there for price to move down before moving back up. Disclosure crypto, absolutely. I'll take a look at that for you. GARI, I'll do that after this. So now I want to move down and be a little bit more granular, right? And I can, for this one, I just want to find good, clean, clear, and obvious plays. And what we've got here is we can see we've got this bullish gap at the moment that's containing price. So the fact that price has come in, found support here, again, like I said, there's always a little concern here But if we're looking for price to move, take liquidity from a high, takes it from this high, for example, this one as well, comes back down, rebalances the gap, then the expectation is for price to move up again and then seek external liquidity, which is this high, okay? Now, it hasn't managed to do that yet. So holding this gap would tell me that price is still bullish overall. Obviously, we're bullish higher highs, higher lows, but after this expansion here, we want to see this gap hold so that price can first of all take out this. We hopefully get a strong close above this, retest this area, and then move higher. Now, unlikely it looks this clean, right? But they're the kind of general principles and areas that I'll be looking at. However, if we close below it, and there's a little sneaky caveat to this because we do also have this gap here, is, close below this gap here, and then I'm targeting these lows and then this low. No question, I think price is going to come down deeper. However, while we kind of hold these areas, pretty difficult to be bearish because we could close below this here, but then react to this gap and move higher. The other reason that we could do that is if we're looking at this in terms of our theory that price often corrects 50% of its expansion moves, right? Then maybe that's where we're going. Just to give you an example again of just the closest one, which is this down move here. So from there to there, see how price sold off down to here, but ultimately then corrected back above this 50% level here before selling off again, ultimately finding rejection at this base of this order block, right? So that's what we're looking for. If we don't have the gaps in there, then we're looking for price to engage with these order blocks. The up close candles in a downtrend should defend price. See how price retested it here, sold off. So now we're saying, okay, if the sellers are still in here, then we expect rejection. The same way that if the buyers are in here, we expect continuation. We're then looking at those kind of support and resistance flips as areas of confluence that we can get involved, okay? On a more granular scale for our kind of intraday traders, I would have expected a little bit more of a reaction here, but again, we could be coming down to fill some of these inefficiencies. We have swept liquidity below this low. All right, so what we're saying here is what happens when we sweep liquidity below a low. Well, we take an external liquidity, we look for price to rebalance internal liquidity. Lo and behold, what do we get? Price targets this gap, and now it's pushing down further. So quite simply, if I want to be bullish to this high, I want to see a 15-minute close above this, and then I can see I've really got some clean air to drive up to in there. That's certainly what I'd be looking at today on an intraday basis. So let's take a look at Gary, was it? Oh, sorry, I missed the eye, haven't I? Let's have a look. Let's take a look here on... I'm going to take a look at our friends over at OKX, shall we? See what they're doing with the Gary tokens. So, okay, so first thing that kind of stands out to me here, we've got a nice amount of price action on this actually, is this low. Okay, actually we'll keep that in red because that is a key liquidity target there. So really, really difficult for me if I see these, and again, broken record, but a failure swing here, that's not a swing failure. Swing failure is when price goes past it and it leads to a move the other direction. This is a failure swing, meaning that price has targeted this area for liquidity, but for whatever reason has rejected back the other way. Now, really, really simply, where are we delivering from? We're delivering from this big weekly bearish gap. Fine, so we've seen a rejection there. Where's the most likely target for price, in my opinion, based on this? It is here. Right, these two lows, all right? The first one of which sits at 0.00973 and the low of which sits at 0.00930. I would not expect this to get run without this. I think this could be a really, really key liquidity area here for a move like this, all right, which is what I'd want to see here from Gary. I'd want to see this area, full support and resistance flip, and then we can start coming up. I mean, that's a perfect target up there, right? Equal highs, great liquidity pool, nothing much to kind of get in the way of it here. The key kind of weekly battle here for Gary is to get above this gap here. Should we do that, close above it, remember that would become an inversion, meaning that we then look for this area to offer us nice support as we drive higher. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened at the moment, so we have to keep that as it is. Now, looking at it here on a daily basis, we can see we had this nice kind of period of resurgence here. would look for this area to have done something. What do we do? We've not got any equal lows there. We kind of swept this low here, which led to a small corrective move up. And now we're kind of playing around with this low here. Just going to get rid of that for a moment to make the chart a bit clearer. Once again, you know, the inversion was our kind of key indication here that price was looking to move lower. Why does this happen? Well, quite simply, when price is moving in an inefficient manner, meaning that there's just sell orders in here, for example, on the way down, or just buy orders when you make these gaps, just means that there wasn't order pairing there, right? So you leave these inefficiencies and the market likes to rebalance those, all right? So that's why we target them when we take liquidity. For me, I'm always looking from a perspective of liquidity. Where is price moving to? What's it chasing down? So what do we want to see here? Well, we've got a really nice pre-made level here. Look, close below it here. Where do we expect price to go? Yeah, broken record. I know we expect it to take liquidity. It took the liquidity. Where do we expect price to go once it's taken the liquidity? Well, to the next form of internal liquidity in the form of this inversion gap. Nice, huge rejection here. That wick alone should have told you that price was looking to move lower. And internal, where are we taken? That low. Now, what do we expect? Price to move up into internal again, right? So that's been swept. That's been swept. Now what we need to do is we wait for this daily close and we might get another really nice area to test here. So let's say the daily close is like this. Quite simply, then we get our bearish gap. We expect rejection in here and for price to move lower unless we close above it, right? If we close above it, then the expectation is, okay, that's resistance, turn to support. We look for a little pullback in here because, again, you know, you want to be a buyer when there's blood in the water. You want to be a seller when there's euphoria, right? Very, very simple. Applies to investing, applies to trading and everything like that, right? So price pulling back a little bit to here, trying to catch people offside, ultimately knowing that this area should hold and you flip long. Well, what happens if you flip long here and it crashes right through? Well, we're not right all the time, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, or there wouldn't be a market. But it just means if we come back below this, then you can be pretty certain price is seeking liquidity lower. My target for that would be this swing low here, 0.01121. All right, but we don't have that at the moment until we get that daily close. So we're going to rely on our 4 hour to give us some granularity here. And we can see that we had quite severe volume imbalance here. So we can use that area or we can use the gap that's above it. All right. So you could be conservative and say, okay, well, you're moving between gap to gap, or you could move to the body. But generally, I would look at this area here for the inefficiencies within it. You've obviously got a fair value gap between there and there, and you've got a volume imbalance between there and there. So this kind of gives us a little bit of a pre-made area that says, while we're being held below here, we're still favoring shorts into lower targets. I really like this, for example. It's a low within a fair value gap. So these are great liquidity pools. Why? Because the fair value gap should offer support and has offered support. This is where this led to a huge uptrend here, and a huge expansion higher. So let's see if those buyers are still in there, right? Let's see if the willingness to buy at this level is still considered value. So we would see how we act there. So while we're in here, for example, you're looking for pullbacks to here and for price to test liquidity lower, unless we get a close above this, in which case I'd see that as an early stage. We need to be careful of these gaps that exist in here, but I would worry about them less if we get that close above, because then in my mind, price is seeking liquidity higher, and there's no nicer target here than these beautiful and almost perfect equal highs. All right, so that's what I'd be looking at here. Close above this, we make a move on these highs, hold here, and we move lower. Okay, guys, and then let's take a look at BNB. Okay, forming a reversed head and shoulders on the daily. Awesome. All right. Well, we would be remiss to not check it on with our strategic partner Binance. MD Sizzler, hello, mate. Good to see you on here again. Very, very welcome to the show. If you've got any suggestions, mate, please do let me know. Sorry, I'm just going to start this on the weekly. I know you said about the daily there, which we will get to. That's capping the market for me. That as well, because they're almost both bodies. Look at that. Body really struggled to get above here. Now, people say this to me as well. They're like, well, hang on, BC, you're looking for a strong close above a level. So let's ignore that level for the moment, but focus on this one. Well, first of all, I wouldn't call that a strong close. I'd say that's a big bodied candle. A strong close for me would be, this kind of finishing like here, for example. And we'd be worried about liquidity there. In an ideal world, you'd be finishing like there, right? But It's that kind of upside wick, right? It tells you that the sellers have stepped in here, and you really should expect that at these key points of liquidity, right? All-time highs, etc. But then quite simply, if you kind of say, oh, well, that's strength, I'm going to go long here, and price closes back below here, well, then just don't marry your bias. Stop trying to worry about being right and just say, okay, that was incorrect. Now we close back below here. What's my expectation? Well, price is probably seeking liquidity lower. Where would that be? Well, you know, that swing low, that swing low, that swing low. But most importantly than all of them is this one, because it's within a fair value gap. So again, small displacement, long downside wick, see what the next candle tells us. You know, I'm not saying you're going to wait a week, but if you're a position-based trader, you'd be more than happy to, right? When price closes back above this level, think of it like a range, yeah? If this is your range low, let's say, for example, this is your range high, then what have you got here? Well, quite simply, you've got, make these a bit thicker so they stand out. And we'll slap a little 50 in here as well. What a beautiful range, right? So we have the expansion move higher, price sets a low. Price then comes back up, closes above the midline. We're looking for this to hold. It does, not the cleanest, but look at the bodies here, the long downside wicks. Once it gets back above and shows you that consistency, look how all of the bodies respect this midline, and ultimately we get expansion higher. To sound like the legend himself or remotely, SZ, what's this? Deviation. Price is back within the range. Why would it be back within the range? And then look, you find support initially here at the midline with this pin bar candle, but then price nukes to the bottom. What is this? A deviation. How do we know that? Well, price step back inside. Look at this candle here, yeah? So what happened? Price broke out, deviated, closed back inside. Deviation confirmed here, we target the midline, and then the lows if this fails to hold. What have we got here? Deviation. How do we know? Price step back inside the range. First target's the midline. Now we've closed above here, we're looking for this to offer support and for price to make a move back to range higher, right? At that point, we then make our decision. If price deviates and closes back within, then we trade it lower again. But as long as it holds outside of it, then we look to hold that out, all right? So that for me is a super clean range here on B and B. So, okay, I'm not much of a pattern trader, Simon. I have to admit, I tip my hat, to legends like Axel Kaibar and, you know, some of the absolute dudes. We've got Bast, for example, Trader Bast is over the cements at patterns and trend lines and stuff like that. Obviously, Birb knows his stuff as well. So you're saying kind of a reverse head and shoulders. So I don't know if you were looking at this being the kind of head and shoulders pattern here, maybe. So in terms of this coming up, so shoulder, head, this is a little bit messy, I suppose, but shoulder comes back down and then sells off. Well, why is that thingy? Because one of the things I was always taught about head and shoulders is that you want to, I'll do this as a box rather than a line, but you want to look at the low of the shoulder here that's set, and then price coming back down, setting that lower shoulder here. This retest then creating the shoulder. It's not particularly clean, I'll give you that. But like I said, I'm not really a pattern trader, but I can certainly see the dynamics of how price is playing out. Either that, or maybe you're kind of looking at it in this respect, that price has, that price has come down into here. And now you're saying, okay. And that makes sense as well, right? Because again, if we look at this area here from this shoulder, the inside of this bit here, is this area now being used as the support to launch that higher. Ultimately, what I would say that I really like about this from both a long and short perspective is after seeing this break out of a key level and this V-shaped collapse, yeah, so you might hear this term used a lot, V-shaped recovery. Well, that's a V-shaped rejection. This very much looks like a V-shaped recovery, right? So they're these aggressive moves. You've seen them jar down, jar, whole new word for you there. You see them shoot down, right? And it's a fast, aggressive motion. And you'll see this in price action in a lot of areas, right? And you're looking for these recoveries. Find some of them look better in hindsight, right? But quick up, quick down, that's when you're kind of looking for those rejections. And we can see that here. Sharp move up, sharp move down makes, you know, all the more valid when you're at key liquidity levels, right? Like range low, range high, for example. So that's where we are with that one at the moment. Looking at it as we look at it from kind of liquidity perspective, well, I like the fact that we're holding this midline, gives us a great reference point for price to go to. Ultimately, if we're bullish here, then our expectation is for price to seek liquidity above the highs. I think that's the clear and obvious one. External range liquidity, price has found support down here. Where did it find support from? Well, quite simply from our nice bullish gap over here. That's the kind of origin there of that expansion move higher. We have that expansion. Now we're back above. We're holding this midline beautifully. Look, just wicked below it. While we hold here, we're looking for price to push up to this target, 605.7. So one for our friend Whack here, who trades with us and uses this a lot as well. We also have a daily change in state of delivery here, confirming this as kind of an internal order block. So again, we want to see that area hold and just give you an indication that price may be willing to move. And okay, so this is really, really interesting now. So we're holding this daily order block here, right? And we've created this 4-hour bullish gap. We've seen a slight reaction here as price has kind of moved higher. Now, what's interesting, I think, price has just kind of swept this. Right, you can see on here, price has just tickled above this high and then it's kind of sold off lower. Now, we're not quite back into a bullish structure here, right? But we are delivering from a bullish gap. So there's a small area to consider here. Well, two areas actually. One is this, which is the bearish gap that we're drawing into because, look, if we look at it like this, we're kind of in between with market structure at the moment because we've gone from a higher high, higher low, higher high into a lower low. Now we need to see if this is forming the lower high, yeah, in which case expectation would be for lower prices, right? However, if price kind of shoots on from here, close comes above this high, then we haven't got a valid break of structure. We've just got a shift, all right? And actually looking at this low, look how beautifully it held. Nothing closed below this. Shows that there was strong buying here, and it also aligns with our midline. And as traders, most often than not, we're looking for these types of confluence, all right? So we hold this, then we kind of going to look to move this higher. Ultimately, if we want a little bit more kind of, I don't want to say confidence, confirmation, then I'd wait for a 4-hour close above this, inverting it, then we turn that purple, and then we look to this high and ultimately this high. However, I want to see on the lower time frame here, actually. This is going to be the key for me, how the lower time frame reacts, because we've swept this high now. And double Asia is something I'll say for the trade club members, right, that will know what I mean by that. But look at this. Now we've got a pre-made recipe, right? Now we can say, okay, if that's the level that's capping the market, we'd obviously actually be aiming for this high here. So let's just move that up a minute. That's what we're now targeting. And then obviously higher up as well. We have those higher time frame levels that we looked at, especially over here, right? So what do we want to do? Well, whatever your trade parameters are, for me, I'm looking, if I want to see strength regained, I'm looking for resistance to become support. So quite simply, I just want to see a strong close above this. Oh, I don't want to do that, I know that. Strong close above this area respected, move up to here, same with this, and so on and so forth, building that beautiful staircase pattern higher, respecting ultimately the bullish FEGs when we make them, so respecting the bullish gaps and closing above and holding, yeah, the highs. And then what you would ideally want to see is in this expansion move higher, maybe another bullish gap in here. And again, then you're just saying, okay, well, if the buyers are still here, this is where we're looking for them to step in. If you close below it, then maybe it's seeking liquidity lower. Just a good, clean way to kind of add some confluence to the charts. So that's certainly how I'd be looking at BNB, but really, really good input as well there from Simon. I think I covered the two obvious head and shoulder patterns on there, although like I say, I'm far from an expert on those, mate. So I'll bow to your expertise, or certainly someone like Axel in that respect, all right? Andre, my friend, right now we're in a POC and the VWAP is at 669.40. Okay, so BTC. Well, let's take a look. First of all, for our friend Chessbro, we're going to take a look at SCI. Then we'll close off with BTC. Yeah, so let's have a look. Where are we? Bullish to see. Okay, nice. Yeah, I'll check BPro as well for that to see if we've got any divergences coming through. They're really, 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 really powerful. Right, so let's clear that up. What are we doing? Where have we been? And where are we going? Big questions here. So one thing we can see here, always really important to note when you have like strategy, not failures, but when you have things like this, right? So when we closed below this, yeah, my expectation was for price to come and take out these equal lows down here, right? It didn't. It closed back within it. So then the bias changed very quickly to saying that we're targeting this bearish gap. Okay. So quite simply, weekly scale, I was wrong here. We expected price to the downside when we recovered on the lower time frames, then happy to trade this higher, thinking that probably we might get a rejection around the midpoint. We did not. So then when you know you're wrong here and you close this out, you say, okay, well, now we're actually drawing up to this. While we're rejecting from here, though, then downside targets are still favorable here, right? So we have this one. Okay, and then we have the main kind of equal lows below here, which we'll just mark up as well. Yeah, you love your Elliott wave, didn't you, man? I did used to study Elliott wave, actually. It's yeah, it's a good discipline. I know some traders that use it really well, and I don't believe that, I don't believe there's one system that fits all for trading. I think there's a lot of ways to make money in this market. I think most of the time we're kind of self-destructive creatures that kind of get in our own heads and in our own way. But if you find a good system that speaks to you, the most important thing that you can do is find something that you understand, that you like, yeah, and that you can understand and you can trade. Make sure you can trade in time frames you're available, etc. Now, this level here for me is a key pivot point. I'll tell you as for why. Well, quite simply, abnormal wick, slight close below, retest, sell off, retest, sell off. So this gap combined with this, the fact that we've got a larger gap up here, fair enough. But actually, if we close above both of these, yeah, and take out this high, then what we've done is we've set lower high, higher low, higher high, right? We're going to have to wait a little while for that on a weekly scale, obviously, but just to kind of draw that up. Now moving down onto the daily. Once again, broken record time, but we can see how the inversion gap gave us that confidence to say, okay, once we close below this here, right, then look, this area is rejection. We're ultimately expecting lower prices. And a skinny gap here, I wouldn't pay too much attention to. This one here is probably the key thing, although again, it is a little bit thin, but we should expect that to offer some kind of support here. Price is currently in that. Obviously, moving below that, where I really like as a liquidity target is here. Relative equal lows, obviously on the lower time frame, which we'll look at in a second. But also look at it, lows within a clear and obvious fair value gap here. So we expect there to be liquidity resting there. One more thing to say here is that we've taken liquidity from below this low. So again, on a daily basis, if we close and leave a bearish gap here, that's going to be the target for price to draw back to before coming back and probably testing these lows here. If we closed above it, should we get it, then higher prices is what I would be targeting here, all right? So then to look at this on the 4 hour, we can see just a real tickle into that gap. Now we've had an aggressive sell-off here, leaving a lot of inefficiencies, all right? So again, this is the start of this daily gap being made, which we don't have confirmed yet. So we're saying, where's price currently reacting from? Well, I think it's just snuck into this small 4 hour bullish gap here as well. We can see we have this order block. Look, consecutive down close candles here. Price then has an aggressive expansion after it. This is an area we're interested, all right? So yeah, so watching this here, this is looking a little bit ugly at the moment just because we've got such a gappy upside, for want of a better term, but that's what I'd be watching here on the 4 hour. If we draw back and reject here, then targeting lower. If we close above that, I think price could move up, at least to kind of 50% of this. Yeah, so probably this gap here, or maybe this kind of order block. So close above here, I think intraday, especially with favoring longs. However, we do need to see some kind of good structural recovery here. This collection here, or cluster of equal highs, is also going to be a really, really tempting target for price at some point soon. Awesome, Andre. Well, I'm glad your analysis is lining up with mine, mate. So it's always good to have confluence. So let's take a look at Bitcoin, shall we? Close up on that, and then we can all go about our merry way for the day and go and find some nice trades. Got about 35 minutes until we kick off with Trade Club. So let's go and see what we've got over there. Big day of news today as well, guys. I must remember to cover the news with you before we go. So Bitcoin, here we are. Now, I'm just going to leave that on there for a second. I think possibly got a weekly on here somewhere, but it doesn't really matter. Basically, it's really, really simple here. We've come down, took out, again, remember, key low, why? Because it's sat within a fair value gap. Suleiman K, my friend, how are you? Good to hear from you. This is what I'm most interested in on a weekly scale, is this inversion. Right, again, look, strong close above it. So what's my expectation now? Well, quite simply, the price is moving towards this high over here at 71,946. Had the strong close, got the retest of this level. The one thing I would say, and whenever you're looking at what price is doing, I'm always asking myself, where's going to inflict the most damage? And there's a brilliant statement from an old trader I used to know called I think his handle was SMFX, Aussie dude, really funny guy. Traded kind of similar liquidity principles to me, and we got the opportunity to cross over years ago. And I always had a saying, I can't remember exactly what it was, and it was a lot of a bit of swearing involved. But basically, think about where you can inflict most damage if you're the market, and the chances are it's heading there. All right. Now, something I've got, and the reason that I'm saying that is because now we've closed above this, we're holding this area of support. We've had these big expansive weeks here on Bitcoin. Even this one, price tried to get brutally sent back down to here. What happened? Just held up in our inversion gap and then had this beautiful move, ultimately taking liquidity above the prior week's high. Now, what you'll notice is, especially with weekly, what have we done here? Taken liquidity above this high. What's capping the market? Well, that high. Yeah. If you look at it here, and let's do it a bit thicker, the high from that candle got swept here. What then happened? Well, liquidity was left above this high here. And what's happened now? Well, that high has now been swept and prices sold off. So why am I interested more in that high? Well, quite simply, I'm just going to do it in a different color, doing teal or something, right? Quite simply, this high here is what's capping the market, right? Price got up to here, couldn't close above it, couldn't close above it, couldn't close above it again here. So we want to see this level closed above. But what I really like as a move is in this expansion high, we've left this bullish gap. Now, what do we say? When price comes out, it so often likes to rebalance these gaps. Now, from a cleanliness perspective, in terms of the charts, not physical, we would want to see a high swept ideally, and then a fair value gap engaged with. Now, crypto, as I'm sure most of you know on this, if you have had it or if you had much exposure to it at all, is very much its own animal. So we don't always expect it to be the cleanest. Yeah. So if price breaks down from here, I have a sneaky feeling we've got a lot of liquidity. Look at that downside wick, a lot of buying pressure under here, right? But also a lot of people's stop losses. So the market loves to do things like this. People typically get late to being bullish or bearish. So what happens? Well, people get late and they say, okay, no problem. Well, I'm going long. My stop loss is here, stop loss is here, stop loss is here, etc. Over leveraged because they think it's going to moon, and then the market does something like this, corrects those people, and then moves higher, right? There's no criticism of people. Pretty much everybody stops there and at some point is used as exit liquidity. And it will always happen. At the end of the day, we're gamblers that are taking one side of the market. You have to have someone on the other side of it, or you wouldn't have to bid or the bet. So, you know, for every bid, there has to be an ask, right? So for every buyer, there has to be a seller. Now, I like this low here, right? I have to say 63,611. It's sat right above this fair value. It is the low that causes the fair value gap. So it isn't a low within a fair value gap, but this fair value gap to me just looks really tempting. And what would we do? We do that brilliant old thing where we come down, we have that expansion. This leaves a failure swing. People start to get bearish too soon, pump loads of liquidity up here as they leverage short. Price ultimately just sets a higher low, wipes out all of that leverage, and then moves higher. That's my ideal scenario for Bitcoin. Whether we get it or not, who knows? But that's what I'm watching on that time frame. Moving to a daily here, we've got our level that's capping the market. This is what we want to see price close above. But we do need to remember that's on a weekly scale. But look how clean this line is. Even we haven't even had a daily body close above that. But this is what I'm watching here, right? As long as we hold this daily gap, I'm bullish, right? I'm a simple freaking creature, and I love to keep things simple. But as long as we hold that, I'm bullish. Close below this here, and I am targeting that low at 63,611 aggressively. But while we hold this, I'm looking for price to move higher. Okay. Now, 4 hour, what can we do to say about that? Well, all my days, I like the look of that. Equal lows sat within a fair value gap, massive liquidity target. So if we saw something like this and a decent recovery, that would really have me bullish on this. All right. Now, I don't really have much else to go for on here. So actually, I'm probably going to go a bit more granular and see here on the hourly. Let me just turn off our friend Geo's indicator for a second, just because it's an absolute wizardry piece of kit, but I don't want it confusing anyone without the context. Equal lows here as well. Look, oh, they're just glorious. Price coming down, taking out those would be the dream scenario here, taking the liquidity and moving higher. However, you know, looking at this here, we have just had, like, playing into that theory as well, it's a super skinny fair value gap, right? So the thinner the gap, typically, the less impact it can have. But at the moment, we've had that close below. We're now retesting that area and coming down. I think seeing a close back above this, invalidating it, you know, on an hourly scale here would give me a little bit more confidence on an intraday basis that we're targeting maybe these equal highs here. But what we can see is price kind of trapped between equal highs and equal lows. And these are really, really powerful liquidity pools, all right? But again, market structure, we've set a low, higher high. Bulls now want to see this become a higher low and move beyond this, yeah? From a market structure perspective, would then see us shift or actually break structure. So we'd look for this area to hold a support and then move higher. All right, guys, we're going to leave it there. And oh no, Andre, sorry, I didn't see your question, mate. Let's have a look. Quick question. It's more like curiosity. Do you have a coin that you bet the most in this cycle? Really good question. Do you know what, mate? I'm a very simple intraday trader. That's how I make my money in the markets. That's how I've kind of forged my career. I'm not actually one of the best investors. What I do have is I have one of the very best teams around me, from fundamental analysts, swing traders, people that understand these markets far more intimately than I. And that team is over at the Birb Nest, right? So, you can find links in the descriptions. Come along, you can join all the way from free, right? So you don't have to necessarily pay. There are paid memberships if you want education, and there's loads of ways to get involved. But the AI, I look at it more as narratives, right? And I do really fancy the AI narrative still. I think it's so powerful. I think there's so much more to come from it. There's so much of it that we don't understand. There's a lot of things where mass adoption protocols are still to take place with it, into so many systems. And I think it's going to be a painful, long journey. That and real world assets, to me, they're the really, really key things that I'm all about. All right, guys. And yeah, do smash the likes if you like it. Thank you for that, Andre. And yeah, wicked. Again, I know it's a funny one actually at the moment, how it reviews the stats. We've got like 17 or 18 people watching us through my feed on Twitter and on YouTube, but we've got about 2,500 watching us through Adrian, which is Crypto Burbs. So let's thank him, because I'm often just stealing his followers, right? If you've got any questions, guys, if for whatever reason you're not able to comment in these, please do feel free to reach out to me, especially on a Wednesday if you want any assets covered, and we will look to cover those. But as it stands at the moment, I almost forgot. Just want to cover the news with you guys as well, because we have a humongous news day today, right? So Wednesday, the 24th. Look, if you're in the FX markets and stuff like that, I'm sure you'll be aware of these, right? But anyway, for people that maybe aren't, red folder news, this is key economic news events that can really, really affect the market. Now, if you're in FX, your Euro, your Canadian, etc., are going to make a difference. Really what we're looking for as crypto traders, and especially yes, certainly, Peter. I'll jump back on and just give that a quick look for you, mate. As crypto traders and anybody that's trading like we do, the indices, the S&P 500, NASDAQ, Dow Jones, this is massive. Yeah, this is huge today. We're moving into a realm here. Hang on, I hope if I put it on the right bloody week. Here we go. Moving into a realm here. FOMC. This is the thing that moves the dial the most. All right, looking at this down here. It doesn't happen until 6 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. London time. That's 6 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. UTC, which is obviously much more aligned, obviously, with the US markets. This is what moves the dial a lot. We also have other news coming in today as well from the US. So let's really make sure we're aware of that. These things, if you've got positions open, bits and pieces, when the Fed Chairman Powell speaks, it can obliterate the market. This will all be down to what they're doing. They're setting the funds rate today for interest rates. I believe on last look, it's 80 plus to 90% priced in that they're going to freeze rates, and then they will look to drop rates, cut rates if they keep the current figures and statistics on the next rate cut. Now, that could lead to a few things. People might take that as a bit hawkish, meaning bearish, or dovish, meaning that they're looking to consolidate and then looking to cut moving forward. But let's see. What I would say is this just changes the dial a lot. So let's look at that. Now, let's change this here. Sebster, hello, mate. Well, it's all right. We're going to cover just one more, and then I really do have to go. But for our friend Peter Dell, we're just going to take a look at Mantra. Hang on. Make sure I remember to share my screen. NTRA. Where was it? Mantra OM, wasn't it? Or something, Peter? Do you know what the ticker is, mate? I'm sure I asked you this before, but Mantra OM and give you honesty. Is it a crypto one? I can't remember if it's that or, I mean, it looks like it's a crypto one, right? So you've got, so Mantra on here, we've got the Mantra DAO, and then it does come in here on spot as well, which is OM, which you've got on there as well. So maybe it's that one. or you've got OMU USD. Oh, okay, so OM, perfect. All right, mate, well, let's take a look at this one here, shall we, on OKX. Decent liquidity on this, actually. Again, you see that nice falling trend line. What this tells me is that there's lots and lots of liquidity for price to reach for above all these untapped highs here. So I really like that, especially in the fact that we've taken out, you know, key liquidity targets on the way down as well. Yeah, so remembering we've swept those now, including this one. Price now has an opportunity to move higher. So just looking at this here, what have we got on a weekly scale? Nice large expansion here. Should we get a corrective move lower? I do like that gap there. All right, again, we've taken external liquidity here. Okay, so there is a chance the price is now correcting, you know, to find some more buys in there, or some more fuel, if you like, to kind of push higher. I think we'll get a little bit more information here on the daily. Okay, the daily is quite nice. We're acting from a really large bullish gap here, which we continue to hold. We have had a close below the equilibrium of it, you can tell here, so possibly a sign of weakness. But if we look from here to here and say to ourselves, all right, price has now recovered that midline, so as long as we hold here, I think we could look to push up. We've got relative equal highs here, or almost perfect equal highs, actually, which could provide a real big magnet for price here. So that can be quite good. On a 4-hour scale, I mean, look, it's looking bullish overall. I would just think that, look, again, we've built this lovely trendline liquidity leaning down. We have recently on the 4-hour inverted this. All right, so I would say price getting back above this would be a key thing for me. You want to see a reaction at this low, which we've kind of got. Doesn't look like it's kind of got the momentum to sustain it at the moment, but maybe it has. Then you're just kind of saying, okay, target the relative equal lows here, that low and that low, a little bit further apart. But again, I think a really key liquidity pool. I'd just be saying, okay, getting involved in this as a spot asset, looking to hold this, I think I'd be looking and saying, okay, well, you know, where's a really good place to be a buyer here? And I think as we get down here as a confirmation buyer, I think it's back above this level here. I mean, yeah, BPro's not going to, you know, BPro basically is telling us here that we're holding this line perfectly, right? So while we continue to hold this line, we retain a bullish bias and we look for price to push up. If we do start to break down then on the weekly scale, I'd be looking down in and around here as well. BlackRock has bought this along with Ondo. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, really interesting. Great. Oh, Mantra, and of course, RWA. Yeah, fitting right in with that narrative. I'm going to take a little closer look at this one, actually, and give this over to our fundamental team, because love real world assets. I think that them AI really are going to probably continue to be the hot narrative. You will see memes and stuff pop up as well. So we do cover those for the real degens among you. But yeah, that's it, guys. All right, look, I've got to shoot, just got to prep for this live show that we're going to have. So I'll see you legends around the nest that are coming over with me to the live show very shortly in about 10 or 12 minutes, once I've pumped myself out a cup of tea, maybe had some yogurt or something. And then the rest of you, I will catch you next week. Please do be aware of the news later on. FOMC can really move the dial. And just have a great week ahead. If you want to know anything more about me, us, what we do over at the Birb Nest, you can find all the information in the description, and you can find out about our calls, stats, everything. We publish our P&L every month for members too, so we're fully transparent. All right, guys, have a fantastic week ahead. Do trade safe, be aware of the news, and wishing everyone a fantastic close of week and weekend ahead. I'll catch you legends next week.